of where we're looking at hard truths that are actually good news. So when they put this in front of us to choose which one we wanted to teach, I'm like, that one looks good. But it didn't work with the schedule. I was like, oh, okay, well, let me try this one. So I found this one, and I said, yes, we will make this work. So, but to let you know, just kind of for those of you who haven't been here, our very first lesson, Leslie taught that God is God and I'm not. Awesome stuff. Then Grant, embracing the intimacy of being transparent to God. Then Josh 1, are we thinking the way God wants us to think? And then Grant came again, Grant 2, the way is hard that leads to life. And then Josh yesterday, it only felt like yesterday, last Sunday, perfect love drives out fear. So in taking a chapter from Josh, I figured for my lesson today, I need a definition. So he defined fear. So we've got that one. I think it's the first slide coming up. That's the one. Yes. Trust. A firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. So today we're going to be looking at John 16, verse 13 in particular. And that's going to be our next one, I think. Yes. So I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So the hard truth, you will have trouble in this world. The good news, Jesus has overcome the world. So we're going to kind of play with that a little bit today. So my sermon title for this morning is Faith, Trusting God Beyond What We Cannot See. And that's a big one when you think about it. So here we are, John 16, 16 through 33. I'm going to kind of gloss through it, but I have it out just in case I need to hit a spot or two. So we're looking at the disciples in the verses before 33. A familiar story with our disciples, kind of struggling with what's going on. They think they know it, but they're not quite sure. And then Jesus says this wonderful phrase to them, in a little while you will see me no more, and then after a little while you will see me. Mind blown by the disciples. They're like, what's he talking about? You know, you think you've got it all figured out, but you don't. So he's like, and I have to feel for Jesus. Loves his disciples, but sometimes he's got to be sitting there going, hello, you there? You following me on this? Kind of a thing. So he's kind of left scratching his head, with their confusion about this, what are you talking about? So Jesus was not deliberately trying to confuse them. Let's kind of get that straight. This is kind of in the middle of Jesus' farewell discourse going on here, and yet the disciples are still struggling with the understanding of Messiah. They think that Messiah is going to be this king that's going to come on a hard charger and a sword and going to take everybody out. And Jesus is doing his best to get them to go, guys, that's not it. You're missing the point. So in order to kind of help them a little bit, and you got to love Jesus, he tries to help with simple stories. He pulls out this one about using childbirth to kind of explain that cycle of pain, but then there's that joy that comes afterwards that's there. But he's kind of trying to, get them set for what's about to happen. They're going to be experiencing grief at his loss, but then it's going to turn around to this great joy. For all the moms in the audience, you get it. I have no real room to stand here, in a testimony about that. I'm the guy who sat at the side of the bed while Sarah was born. And the nurses lovingly pushed me out of the way because everything I thought I remembered in Le Mans, I didn't remember. So it was very humbling to kind of have them move me out of the way. And I'm like, go Debbie! You got this! Yeah, one of those great moments in life here. But he's using that example, and they're still just not getting it. And then Jesus is speaking figuratively, kind of explains that. It's just going to be temporary, but a time is coming when I'm going to talk to you plainly about my Father. So you got to love it. The disciples get that moment of, let me find it here so I can see it. Yes. Then Jesus' disciples said, now you are speaking clearly and without figures of speech. Now we can see that you know all things and that you do not even need to have anyone ask you questions. This makes us believe that you are from God. Yeah, right. They still don't get it. All of us have, hopefully all of us have experienced this, but you've talked to someone in a conversation and they're talking to you and they're telling you stuff and you're nodding your head and you're going, and then the minute they're through talking, you're like, what the heck were we talking about? You completely missed it. And I think that's kind of where we see the disciples right now. They think they have it. Aha! Only to find out Jesus turns around and says, you believe at last. Well, let me kind of remind you of something. But a time is coming and has come when you will be scattered, each to his own home. You will leave me alone, and yet I am not alone, for my Father is with me. So what's the phrase? Josh and I were talking the other day about this. It's kind of that selective listening. The disciples are in that mindset. They want to hear what they want to hear. But doesn't that describe us too? We want to hear what we want to hear. Sounds good to me. And then you go into it and you're like, this is not good anymore. So it's kind of where they're at. So enter verse 33. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. So when we have a faith that trusts God beyond what we cannot see, we can have peace. So let's transition to after the crucifixion. We have our friends on the road to Emmaus. One of my favorite stories in the Gospels. So these two disciples, they're walking and you can just hear it in them. They're depressed, they're sad. What happened here? This is the guy we were believing in. This was going to be the Messiah. He was going to redeem Israel. And then all of a sudden this stranger comes along. It's like, what's wrong, friends? And they start to go, well, it was supposed to be like this. This guy Jesus. They go on and tell this story. And then finally Jesus says, wait a minute. And then he says, how foolish you are and how slow of heart to believe. And then he begins to spell everything out again. Here we go again, right? With our disciples, spelling it all out. And then they get to their home, they're in the middle of breaking bread, and then their eyes see Jesus. I mean, they wouldn't even believe the women were saying, oh, the tomb's empty. And some of their other guys said, it's empty too. But they couldn't fathom that. And yet here we are in their home breaking bread, and all of a sudden, aha! And we've all had those aha moments in life, But in both of these instances, God was really just lovingly disciplining his disciples, just like he lovingly disciplines each one of us when you stop and think about it. So here we are, walking by faith and learning to trust that God is in control. We have so much in common with the disciples. We think we get it, only to find out we're just scratching the surface of understanding. Now, this is that hard truth of we will have trouble. It dogs us every day. We can't get away from that. And we can wear us down in our walk in faith. But let's remember the good news. Jesus has overcome the world. And when we don't get it, God is always there loving us through it all. And I want to reemphasize that. When we don't get it, God is still with us, lovingly working with us through that. Don't ever feel like you're alone in that. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. Hebrews 11:1. When I was a freshman at Texas A&M University in my dorm, one of my, get him, my Aggie friends in the audience, yes. Walton, was I H? I think I was H-ramp then. We're reminiscing back over here. So, but one of my friends from my youth group had given me this wonderful poster. And I think we can go to that next one. Very similar to this. It was this backlit tree that's frozen. And underneath it, Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. All right, guys, I have to admit, as a freshman, I sometimes didn't quite understand that. And yet, it took me a while. I'm like, look at this. Oh, I get it. It's a tree that will get leaves after the winter. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So yeah, one of those simple things, college life there. But it really inspired me in my early days of faith. And I figured, I need to show a picture like that. That was a challenge trying to find a picture like this, I promise you. So now, Hebrews 11, if you're familiar with it, it's kind of that Hall of Fame chapter. By faith, so-and-so. By faith, insert. By faith, insert. All these great heroes of faith. And you just marvel at that. So while our faith journey may not be a Hall of Fame worthy journey, God is there for us. He lovingly redirects us when we think we have it all figured out, only to discover we missed it by, like Maxwell Smart would say, missed it by that much. And that's kind of where we are in our walk. I know we sang it last week, but I wanted it to be sung again today, the song It Is Well. The newer version that we sang today, I love it, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But those of you that may not be familiar with the older hymn, Peace Like a River, When Peace Like a River, the story behind that hymn is just so powerful. 1873, Horatio Spafford, his wife and 4 daughters were on a ship going from the United States to Europe. In the middle of the ocean, they collide with another ship. The ship sinks. In an instant, he loses his 4 daughters. His wife is saved. And what even is more interesting with this story, there's even more backstory. They had lost their 4-year-old son earlier to illness. And his business and properties were destroyed in the Great Chicago Fire prior to all of this. So you're thinking, it's almost like a modern-day Job story, because it's like boom, 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 and here we are. He's lost his 4 daughters, and his wife is there. He gets a telegram from the wife, saved alone, what shall I do? Oh, just that message alone kind of rips at your heart. And yet, a short time later, he found himself on a boat going to Europe to be with his wife. The captain was able, I guess he had talked beforehand, but gave him notice when they were at the position in the ocean where the ship had sunk. So he's there looking upon the vastness of this ocean. And I can only imagine what that must have been like. Probably needed a bunch of these. And apparently he took all of that, went into his cabin, and in his grief and in his pain, wrote the lyrics to It Is Well With My Soul. That old hymn. In this newer version, I love it so much because there's that part, let go my soul and trust in him. The waves and wind still know his name. Think about that. When did we see wind and waves? Peter, hello, trying to walk on the water. I can do this. I can't do this. Get it back in the boat. And yet, where's Jesus in all of this? He's there. And then he gets back in the boat. He says, be still. Did y'all watch The Chosen? Have y'all watched Chosen episodes? Some of that stuff is amazing. Just from coming from a drama background, the visuals just blow me away. But that scene of Peter walking on the water, coming back in the boat, and Jesus saying, be still. And the waves just stop. You mean, oh yeah, that's a great story, Don. That's in Bible days, right? Oh no, folks. He can still stop the waves. He can still stop the wind in our lives. We just have to trust that. That's hard to do. It really is. Life, we've got so many things going on. I love my church family here because it's made up of college students, folks that are just beginning that journey. I've got folks that are graduating, dreading the end of that journey. What happens afterwards? Starting a career, getting a career. Gee, I want to get married. And we all know what that's like. That's, hello. That's a struggle. It's a challenge. Relationships, and trust me, even when you're married, relationships can be a challenge, okay? And then you get into things like a mortgage. Woohoo! Where are my homeowners? Let's see the homeowners out there. Yeah, baby, you know what I'm talking about. 2.5 years and mine's paid off. Thank you. So close, yet so far. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, health. So many things impact our lives, and it's sometimes hard to see. So I'm going to share with you a few from me, little stories about Don. I was at Abilene Christian, the real scenic location of Abilene, Texas, in the middle of nowhere, and it was my first semester there, and I had just broken up with a girlfriend, and I'm 22. It's 1983, and I'm ready to find somebody. And I remember walking in the front yard of my landlord's house, waiting for my brother to come pick me up from Amarillo, scenic Amarillo to scenic Abilene. Woohoo! And I remember just pouring my heart out to God, saying, okay, I'm letting go. I need to trust in you. Can you help me with this one? Now, one of the joys of praying underneath a pecan tree, for you Texans, there's a lot of snacks there. So I was able to grab some pecans, crack them open, and nibble while I'm praying. And, but still, it was like, I couldn't see beyond, the next semester. Through our roommates. That's how I met Debbie. And that began that journey. Oh, thank you. Anyone need Kleenex? I'm packing. Yeah. I'm ready. But, that was that journey. Then, our third year of marriage, I was having some problems. I was becoming an angry man. And that was taking its toll on my relationship with my wife. And we had counseling back then, premarital counseling and stuff. Nothing like Guide to Decide. Okay, shameless plug for Guide to Decide right there. Way different, way better now than then. And I was going into youth ministry. I thought, I don't need any counseling. I got it all figured out. No, I didn't have it all figured out. And I remember I had to have a friend of mine, I had that Nathan moment of like, you're the man. And he looked at me and said, Don, you need some help. And I got it. And it was not easy. My first session with the counselor, I'm sitting in the chair. He's writing my life on this dry erase board. And I kid you not, I'm getting smaller and smaller and smaller in my chair. And the real kicker to that, the next weekend I was preaching on love. So that drive home was like, you don't know anything about love. But towards the end of the counseling, it was kind of nice to hear the counselor come up to me and said, Don, you do realize that you were this close to becoming an abusive husband. Scared me to death. Not perfect by any stretch. Debbie can tell you that. We've had our journeys through all that, but And then my most recent was December 2021. I'm like, something's wrong. I'm bleeding internally. And like 2 days into this, we go to the doctor, and I did a blood test, and we had stopped to get some dinner. We're driving home, and the nurse calls and says, you need to get to the ER now. And I'm like, huh? My blood count was dropping rapidly. And Debbie will tell you, I was like looking terrible. So we get to the hospital and all that stuff, and they're trying to figure out. There's nothing more exciting than coming to you with this big old jug of liquid saying, I need you to drink all of this so we can do this wonderful little test to look inside you and see what's wrong. I mean, my plumbing got discovered from the bottom through the top. I even got the camera treatment, with that. And I had 3 transfusions? It was that bad. But one of the memories I have of this is when they were taking me in for, I think, my first procedure. I'm lying in the room. Okay, I'm being real transparent here. sorry. But I'm lying in the room and I'm praying, and then it came to me, Don, you have people praying for you right now. God, that is powerful stuff, guys. When you stop and realize that this unseen crowd of people that know you and love you are praying for you in that very moment. Whew. And it gave me a peace I don't think I've had in a long time, at least to that point. Because I was scared. It's one thing to get help for counseling. It's another thing, I get married and all this stuff. I get a job and all this stuff. But when you don't know what's going on with your body, that's even more frightening when you stop and think about it. Took them forever, but we think we figured it out is because I was taking a baby aspirin, for my blood pressure, and it had irritated the lining in my stomach. And we finally did one of those ultrasound things. So oh, there it is. I'm like, great. Met my deductible. I think I even met my out-of-pocket on that one, which was great, considering all the different processes I had going there. But guys, that's just life. I couldn't see beyond that. I was laying in that room going, is this cancer? Am I going to die? I thought I was going to die when I drank the stuff, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, my journey's not done. Just because I'm 64, soon to be 65, thank you, there's still a lot of life ahead of here. That's what I'm aiming for, at least. So I've got to trust in that. So, so how can we walk this journey of faith in God and deal with the hard truth of living in a world of troubles? Well, what is it about sermons we have to have 3 points? So I think I've got my 3 points up there. Boom, here you go. So, nothing new, I promise you. And I think I may have mentioned at the beginning, but with all those lessons before, I'm borrowing heavily from all the previous, speakers. Not to mention we have really good material, in the Bible here, so that helps. But trust in His presence. God has promised us that He will never leave us. Deuteronomy 3:8. The Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. I think I mentioned that one time before we were sharing, presence to me is just the fact that God's here, that He's with us in the midst of our good times and our not so good times. That's pretty amazing stuff. Second point, we need to trust His grace and forgiveness. Okay, look at me. We need to trust in His grace and forgiveness. Because if you're like me, I am so hard on myself, it stinks. Stop being so hard on yourself. God loves you. He loves you where you are. You don't have to be perfect. Thank goodness we don't have to be perfect. But we'll get into that in a minute here because 2 Corinthians 12:9, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made what? Perfect in what? Your weakness. Man, that was a mind puzzle for me as an early Christian. I'm like, Paul's like praying him, can you take this away from me? And God's saying, nope. But here's the good side. My grace is sufficient for you because I am powerful through your weakness. Whew. Upside down world, but that's kind of where it is. And then lastly, let me grab this so I can read it correctly. Trust that God is in control. God is God, and I'm not. I think we couldn't have started it any better, Leslie, with your lesson on that one. Oh, and by the way, today is Leslie's birthday. Boy, that was a great little segue, wasn't it? But God is God and I am not. Stop trying to be like God. Okay? Stop trying to control what you cannot control. My loving wife has had to deal with this for 40 years of trying to watch Dawn go, that's not how it works. God's in control, not you, dingbat, But she still loves me. That's a good thing. I like that. But Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. It's simple. Trust in His presence. Trust in His grace and forgiveness. Yes, Don, that is talking to you too. And trust that God is in control. Now, the other day I was talking to Grant, and he was asking how my sermon was coming. And one of the suggestions that had been made for the lesson was to use the Serenity Prayer. How many of you know the Serenity Prayer, the whole Serenity Prayer? How many of you know the bumper sticker version that's like the first few lines of it, which I had on my desk for the longest time? There's a whole prayer there, guys. It's a whole lengthy thing. And of course, the story behind this, Reinhold Niebuhr, you gotta love some of these names, but he wrote this prayer, and it's really become part of the 12-step programming for like Alcoholics Anonymous. But it speaks to us, and it speaks to us with faith. So I figured I'd kind of wrap things up with that. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. That was the bumper sticker version. Okay? Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace. Taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Pretty powerful stuff. Wow. Well, I'm going to wrap this up with John 14:27. And this passage we used to use as kind of a beginning little song, mini song before When Peace Like a River. And it kind of goes like this. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, nor let it be afraid. My peace I leave with you. Pray with me. God, you are so good. And we love you so much. And we're so glad you're with us. Help us to just listen to you, get ourselves out of the way. Help us to have vision that can attempt to look beyond what we can't see. And just keep hanging with us when we still don't have it figured out. We love you, God. Pray through Christ. Amen. All right, we're going to transition into communion.
Thanks for joining us for our sermon podcast. We would love for you to join us on Sunday morning or in one of our small groups during the week. And you can get more information about that at dentonnorthchurch.com.